Catherine Ritz, who is our Director of World Languages, is here this evening to do a presentation just as an overview of the department, the offerings, and she'll be here to answer any questions that you might have. This is something we've been doing over the last few years, is having curriculum leaders come in and have a chance for you to hear about the program and to be able to ask questions. So, Catherine, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited to talk about my department. I'm very proud of all the work that we've been doing, and I hope that the town of Arlington is proud of this program as well, because I think it's rather phenomenal, if I do say so myself. So I will get right started. So I wanted to just start with a little bit of a peek into what our classrooms look like, because certainly from when I studied language, things have really changed. So an important philosophy, if you come visit our classrooms, is the concept that we are using what we call the target language to instruct our students. So if you come in, we follow the national standards. 90% plus of the instructional time is in the language. That's a pretty big change. So it's sort of an immersive style philosophy. And so that's something we've been really working on over the years to ensure that all the teachers have the strategies they need to enable that to be successful, so that students can understand, so they're not overwhelmed, or are able to follow along and understand what the teacher is saying. And then in the past 2 years or so, we've also been trying to implement the 90% plus standard also applies to students. So really establishing an expectation that in this classroom, when you come in, you're speaking the language. And that begins at level 1. Pretty early on. We established a rule with our students, and it's incredibly transformative. So we're really beginning this in the middle school level. All of the teachers are on board that this is an expectation that you speak the language in the class, and students actually ask permission to use English. But as I'll show you some of the testing results, the proficiency level of the students really skyrocket. This is just a really powerful instructional method. We try to focus on student-centered classrooms. Our goal is communication in the language. It's not about grammatical forms or accuracy. Certainly that's a component of communication, but really the focus is on communicating using real-world, purposeful context for language use. So this is just a couple photos I pulled just to show you some of the activities. We actually brought in a guidance counselor. Students prepared a flyer for potential Spanish-speaking students who might come to Arlington and wanted to learn about, the community, and the guidance counselors came in and kind of rated which one they thought would be the most helpful. We also, use an activity called speed dating, which you can see on the left is really popular. You can know what speed dating is, so imagine ding ding, move to the next partner, you're talking on a specific topic. It's really fun, very interactive. It's very popular. We've also been trying to integrate more and more Skype connections. So you're all familiar, of course, with the Arlington Teosinte group. Elizabeth Dre is actually coming in next week again to speak with our AP Spanish course. And she's helped us set up Skype sessions with students from Teosinte, and our AP Spanish students have been able to speak with them, ask questions, and we've been trying to do that as well. We had a teacher last year who did a Skype connection with Columbia, so we've been trying to expand this as much as possible, so really bringing the real world into our classrooms. And then we have a really fun assessment, if you can believe this is an assessment. It's a gladiator game in the 8th grade. It's a cumulative summative assessment. So we really want it to be fun and interactive and purposeful. So that's just a peek inside our classrooms. Some of the important initiatives that we've been working on. The first, this is a really multi-year process, is a thematic-based curriculum revision. So we've been, for the past, I would say 2 years, have been working on developing our own thematic curricula. So this year, all of our level 1 teachers, and this includes all of the middle school, was considered kind of a level 1, including our level 1 high school teachers, are implementing new thematic-based curricula. So these are common units across languages. They're what we call language agnostic, so it really doesn't matter the language, it's this kind of unit, and then the cultural components are adapted to the specific language. So we really focused on can-do performance targets. So for example, we have a home and family unit. So what if I grew up in another country is our essential question, and the performance target, I can have a conversation about our home and family. So we're really trying to emphasize the conversational skills in our classes. An important component of these thematic curricula are using what we refer to as authentic materials. So in foreign language, that means it's made by a native speaker for a native speaker. So it's not this adapted, simplified, teacher-made text. So just to show you some examples of what these look like. So we're using Pinterest to collect all of these. So you can see these are authentic resources. The one on the left is from Mexico, we have a nutrition, healthy eating unit. So they're looking at authentic documents from Mexico, and then Mi Plato is from the United States, but in Spanish. And you can see how even a beginning level student can approach this because of the imagery and the structure of it, and can make sense of it. So we're really trying to bring these in, and these are important for many reasons, but not the least of which is it's building kind of problem solving and critical thinking skills. When you look at this and you maybe understand, 80%. So here's another one, a school schedule. You have to use a lot of deciphering skills to try to figure out the rest of it, and that's something that we're trying to teach in our units. We're really phasing out the use of textbooks in the modern language program. So as we're implementing the thematic-based curriculum, the textbook's still used as a support, but it's really no longer the driving force of the curriculum, which is an important shift. So this year we have 2 teachers that are piloting a level 2 and 3 curriculum, and we're also having a group revising and trying to finalize that, and then we're hoping next year we can roll out for all of our level 2 teachers a common level 2 and 3 sort of intermediate level curriculum.
Can you just explain level
Sure.
1, 2, and 3?
I'm sorry. Sure. Sorry. So the middle school program is 6th, 7th, and 8th, at the end of which most students enter into level 2 course. So if you think a level 1 is really, they're attaining a novice high level of speaking proficiency, and then in the level 2, we're looking at a low intermediate. Level 3, we're hitting a intermediate mid. The intermediate takes a long time to kind of progress through that as a language speaker. And we offer up through level 5 is the highest level, which would either a 5A, curriculum A, 5 honors, or an AP. Okay. So in a high school, if a student followed the full sequence, they would go up through level 5 at the high school. Okay. Sorry. Another part of the thematic-based units is what are called integrated performance assessments, IPAs. So these are replacing the traditional chapter tests that you may yourself have experienced in your language program. So they provide students with real-world contextualized scenarios for when they might actually be using the language, and have them do a little bit of research, do some speaking with a partner, and come up with sort of a final presentation of some kind. So there's 3 modes that they kind of go through. I won't go into those in detail, but they're sort of circling around a specific topic. So I won't read this over for you, but just in a nutshell, so we've come up with a scenario. This is in our food and nutrition unit, where we're imagining that there's a group of exchange students coming to Arlington from a specific country, and you want to help them find healthy eating choices in the school cafeteria. So you need to first understand what is healthy eating in their home country. So what is that considered? That's an important first step. And then what types of food would students from that country actually like? And then you're comparing it to your own culture and saying, okay, well, what's offered there? What's offered here? What might these students enjoy when they come to the cafeteria, and also be able to eat healthfully, and so on. So you can see we're bringing in those authentic resources, the sort of the nutritional guides from various countries. They're having conversations with their partners, and then they're coming up with a final flyer presentation of some sort in which they make some recommendations for these hypothetical exchange students. So just to give you an idea of what that curriculum looks like. So something along with the revised curriculum that we've been working on is proficiency testing. So we were fortunate to get a grant from AEF a few years ago, and we're able to do a sample testing of the proficiency levels of students, of a sample of students, kind of get a sense, are we hitting the targets that we're coming up with? Are our common assessments in line with what we're hoping our students are achieving? Getting a little bit of external data. And then very fortunate that the district picked up the cost for the past few years, and we'll also be testing a group this year. So we use different assessments for the different languages. So STAMP for our Italian, it's called the Standards-Based Assessment of Proficiency. So students are assessed in their speaking and their listening skills. Apple is the actual assessment of performance towards proficiency. So we use that in French, Mandarin, and Spanish. And it's really nice. It's got like an interactive kind of a Skype video type thing where they're asked questions. They have to respond spontaneously. So it's a really nice performance assessment. And then the Alira is the actual Latin interpretive reading assessment. So we were able to test just over 300 students last year. We're hoping to test the same amount, possibly, if possible, the same exact students, so we can really see, are they making progress? And we also want to make sure that the results we got last year are valid, that weren't just a one-off year. So we've set the proficiency target. So as I was mentioning to your question before about the levels, so you can see we've got what we call our pathway to proficiency. So in the the middle school, we're really trying to hit a high novice speaker, and then in level 2, which would, if they followed the full sequence, would be a freshman. We're getting intermediate low, and then it takes a long time for students to build through the intermediate levels up through hopefully advanced low is really the highest we're shooting for. And Mandarin takes a little bit longer, not surprisingly, for students to get a higher level of proficiency. So what you can see here, this is the data from last year. What's in the box? Oh, darn it. I thought that was going to do that. Sorry, this seems to, I just wanted to do the arrow and it kicked me out of the presentation. Sorry about that. It's okay. So what you can see in the box here, that's the proficiency target that we're shooting for. And you can see what's shaded is where the percentage of students that we're hitting in those various groups. So we were very encouraged. You can see the French, where you see the target. We do have, in most cases, the majority of students are meeting or above the proficiency target that we've set. So we found that was really encouraging. We saw a similar scenario. Not everybody, but you can kind of see, again, that black box is where the proficiency target was, and then the blue is where the students, you can kind of see a progression up as the students go up over the years.
Is the proficiency verbal and it's?
Sorry, this is oral proficiency.
Oral proficiency.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the assessments do test in what you traditionally are the 4 skills: the reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We've been focusing on speaking, primarily because it's, well, first, I think it's the most important reason that you want to learn a language, but also that, historically and traditionally, teachers tend to favor written, and I really wanted to put an emphasis on speaking. So these are for speaking. Thank you for asking.
So how would it work? How would an oral proficiency test work?
So it's, so as I just mentioned, they go into the language lab,
Yeah.
They have the headsets, the microphone, and it gives them a series of prompts. It looks like a Skype conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have the person asks them, they start something simple like, oh, hi, my name is so-and-so, what's your name? And then it's a simulated conversation. So then the
scored.
head kind of nods and waits for you to respond, and you provide your answer, and it records it, and then it's assessed.
And it's scored by
It's not scored live, it's scored by an actual person. So
Oh.
it takes a couple of weeks for us to get the results.
Okay.
So it's not a multiple choice assessment, it's a performance
And
assessment.
it's scored by a person. All right.
It's scored by a person.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Then.
That's okay, please do. This is all obvious to me, so I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we're really happy. We're hitting, for the most part, at or above the target in our Spanish. Come on, clicker.
Can you just
Sorry.
hit the down?
Yeah, do you mind? I don't know why this is not, was working a second ago.
Might be
You could
the
just click to the
battery.
next one.
Oh, yeah, it might be the battery.
Arrow down.
Just the down.
The down arrow.
Not responding to you either.
I heard that this was, oh, there we go.
There you go.
Okay. So, are you going to sit there for me, Robert? In Mandarin, we were so excited. The middle school, this is actually rather outstanding. Our middle school, 7th grade, we had students that were testing novice, high, and intermediate. And then even in 8th grade, we had students that were testing in the intermediate in the oral proficiency. So we're really excited about those results. We did see some regression in the high school, so that's an area of improvement. So we want to test again this year and make sure that's a valid result, but we are kind of watching that. Latin, our students, they flew well beyond and above our proficiency targets, and to the point that we were like, we think our kids are strong, but this is maybe a bit too high, so we're kind of trying to get some national data and sort of find out if this test is really testing what we think it is, but in any case, we were, delighted with these results. Italian, so it tested in the speaking and listening separately. So this one actually, because of the structure of the test, it tests both the listening and the speaking. So we found that our students were exceeding the targets for listening, but struggled a little bit with the speaking. So again, questioning whether that's an area we want to work on improving. I just wanted to also take a minute to highlight some of the enrollment news, I guess, in the department. The most significant piece of news regarding enrollment in the World Language Program is our French enrollment. So we have seen a doubling of enrollment in the French program beginning in the middle school, and the students have hit the high school this year. So just to sort of give you a sense of what that means, if you go back to 2012, in our 8th grade French program, we had 37 students. The following year, 52, 44 the next year, and then in 2015-16, we have 88 students. And then 82, and this year we've got in the high 80s as well. I think our 6th grade may be at 91 at this point. So that's a doubling of enrollment. And I will gently just acknowledge that we haven't added any French staff, so we've been a little bit squeezed with that. And the kids have now hit the high school, and the program it's great news, but we are a little bit tight. And you'll just, as a point of comparison, the 8th grade Spanish, you can see at the bottom, that same year when we had 37 French students, we had 133 Spanish students. Fast forward to this year, we only have 143. So while we've got 10 more Spanish kids, we've got more than double the same amount in French. So it's just sort of interesting that more students are choosing French than they had previously. The Mandarin program, so we're able to get Mandarin to the middle school a few years ago. Mandarin's been a little bit slower to pick up in enrollment. We're excited this year that our 7th grade, so last year we had 21 students in the 7th grade Mandarin, and this year we have 61, so we're really encouraged about that. It's just been a slower language to pick up in kind of popularity throughout the district, but it's finally starting to kind of to take off. And the Italian program, we launched it back in 2013, and we've been able to grow, and that's been thanks to a grant from CASIT, and have been able to grow from a level 1 through 4. So we now have a 4-year Italian program. And just this past week, we were in discussion with the Italian consulate, who is giving us a grant for an after-school AP Italian course. So our Italian teacher will be offering, I think we've got 8 students that will be doing after-school studying for the AP Italian. So that's entirely grant funded from the Italian consulate. So we're really excited about that.
So actually, can you just go over for
Sure.
the audience which languages are offered at the middle school level, which
Sure.
languages are offered at the high school level, and are any of them sort of threatened because the grant is about to go away, or are they all sort of, are we committed to all of them?
Yeah, so at the middle school, we currently have French, Spanish, Latin, and Mandarin. So as I just mentioned, Mandarin's been in the middle school just for a couple of years, so been growing that. The high school, we have those 4 languages, and we also have Italian, and that was thanks to a grant from this organization called CASIT. The grant from CASIT only covers a small portion, so it covers about, I think, 2/3 of one class for one of our teachers, and the district is covering the rest. As far as we know, it's a yearly grant, renewable grant. We don't know from year to year how much we're going to get. They've assured me we're going to get the grant again next year. They're very happy that we're going to be offering the after-school Italian for AP, which is something they're really trying to encourage. So I guess I feel some confidence that that will continue. But those are the only grants that we have that are supporting the staff.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. You'll also see, I just pulled these figures, the overall enrollment in the program as a whole has increased. So if you just go back to 2011-12, at the high school, 73% of students were taking a language, and we've now grown to 84%. So we've seen, we think, more students sticking with their language over the years, which we're very excited about. Another component of our program, to your question about what's offered, we also have an elective online language offering. These are through Brigham and Young University. They have online high school credit courses, and we offer students American Sign Language, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, German, and Russian. And this year we have 18 students that are taking one of those languages. So those are an elective. In addition, it gives them a nice exposure to the language. But some of the students taking them are just incredibly passionate about those languages, so we're excited to be able to make that offer thanks to technology. Go ahead. So a couple sort of things that have been going on beyond the program, one of which I spoke about last year at the school committee is the Seal of Biliteracy, which is an award that recognizes students' proficiency levels in English and one other language. So we piloted that last year. We were very excited to have, so last spring we had 51 students that we assessed and 41 of them qualified for the Seal of Biliteracy. So this follows state guidelines. So the state Language Association working with an English Language Learner Teacher Association has established guidelines that we're following. So we have a lot of students that are testing. There's 3 levels, platinum, gold, and silver. So our students, we had 19 that made the advanced low, which is the highest level of the seal. And then we did test again this fall, and we'll test again in the spring. So we had 15 students that assessed this fall, 14 of whom qualified for the seal. So we've tested in languages, French, Latin, Italian, German, Portuguese, Spanish. And this year we had 3 students that submitted portfolios for Japanese, Polish, and Western Armenian. So we're really excited. Those students obviously are not studying the foreign language program. This is a home language that they have demonstrated proficiency for. And this is actually going to go on their transcript and gives them a chance to show the colleges that they've got this skill that they're bringing with them that they'd never be able to show them otherwise. Just go ahead. These are just 3 of our award winners from last year. These were our 3 seniors. The rest of the students were juniors.
Thank you.
And I will just take the opportunity to invite you on April 27th. We're going to be having a big award ceremony for all of these students and a few others. So I will give you a formal invitation later, but please mark your calendars. Another program that we launched last year is the Global Competence program. This is a program that exists in a number of neighboring districts, and it's really an interdisciplinary certificate program for students. We had 5 of our current seniors successfully completed the program in September. They have a number of requirements: academic component, community service, travel, and then they have to complete what's called a global engagement project. So as you can see from these titles, we had students who studied the evolving gender roles in Peru, who studied Korea. That's actually one of the students who's taking the online Korean, investigated the 2 Koreas, a student who wanted to study Nazi Germany and Italy's government, and so on. Just go ahead. So you can see the evolving gender roles. She did a really nice video presentation, and then another student made a collage about the 2 Koreas. I'll briefly highlight some of the travel. We're trying to expand and give our students the opportunities to experience the language in the culture where it's spoken. She could click, Rob. This year we are running the France Exchange as well. I know you're all familiar with that. That's been a long-standing program that we've been running. The students came to visit us in October from France, and we are going in April to stay with them. We're launching this year in April as well, a new trip for our middle schoolers to Montreal, so they'll get to speak some French up there. We are expecting a visit from students in Beijing. I think many of you may have hosted some of these teachers. I know someone did a dinner at some point, one of the school committee members, for our students from Beijing, but this is from the same school in Beijing that we've been working with for a few years, so they'll be here in January. Next year, we're planning again the Quebec Homestay. I think this would be the 4th year we would be running it. And then we have some new exciting exchanges under works that we haven't yet presented to you guys for approval, but will be soon. One is an exchange with a school in Barcelona that we're working on for next year. And one is an exchange with a school in Florence in Italy for our Italian exchange students. And then we have some initial planning for a student trip for our Latin students to Rome. So that's also coming down the pike. I also just want to make sure the school committee is aware that we offer National World Language Honor Societies in all 5 of the languages that we offer at the high school. We just launched the Italian Honor Society last year. So those are among the students that we recognized at the award ceremony in April. So we have had, I think, upwards of 50 students every year that qualify for the Honor Society. And then we also have a number of extracurricular clubs, activities, and other awards, one of which is the Curtamen competitions that our Latin students have been participating in very, very actively. They're meeting almost weekly to prepare for these and are going all over the place to compete. We have a number of language clubs. We've been raising funds for the Arlington Teosinte group through selling handmade pulseras from local artisans from El Salvador, both in the middle school and the high school. We have got a French club, a Spanish club, very active. You may be familiar with the Café Parisien, the junior year French project that Veronique Leahy launched a number of years ago, which is still ongoing. If you're not familiar with it, you can think of the show Shark Tank, where you have to come up with a business proposal to open up a restaurant in Paris and then defend your proposal. So it's very exciting. And we also have been offering annually the national language contests in French, Spanish, and Latin, and we always have had national level winners at the highest level, so we're really excited about that as well. I hope you are aware, but last year we were awarded the exemplary French program with honors from the American Association of Teachers of France. We had to put together a very rigorous portfolio, and we're the first school in Massachusetts to be awarded this award. So very excited about that. And we've had also a number of, well, I won't read them over, but a number of French students that were received various awards in oral competitions, summer travel scholarships at last spring that I just wanted to bring to your attention. And finally, I just really want to highlight the teachers in the department and how active they have been, not only within their classroom and providing really high quality teaching for the students, but also sharing their knowledge with the larger foreign language community. So we have teachers that are presenting nationally, Abby Holt in the middle school, Ann Zachary, Nalu Hogan, who you can see on the right, as well as myself, presented at the ACTFL, which is the national, because over 9,000 people attend, made presentations there at this foreign language teacher conference. We're presenting regionally. I went with a group of 2 teachers to MassQ, the Massachusetts Computer Using Educators Conference, to present on ways that we're integrating Skype and other technologies. Last year, I was invited to speak at the DESE Fall Convening about the assessments that we've been using as models for other districts. And Veronique Leahy has brought, as you see on the top right photo, group of students to present at the Regis College Project-Based Learning Conference, which she's been sharing on that Café Parisien project as well. So I think we've got a really active and dedicated group of teachers, and I hope Arlington feels proud of this program as strongly as I do. So I would open up for questions. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Slickman.
Well, it's obvious that you have a lot of pride in your department and the work that's going on, and that every year you seem to be raising the bar and improving our world language program in the district. And I think that the data you're presenting and the narrative you have is quite commendable.
Thank you.
Go back a slide. Who was the
person on the floor.
casualty in the lower left? You know,
I wonder
you
about that
don't
too.
put a slide up of a
That one.
somebody lying on the floor looking quite dead without attributing.
So that is actually our phenomenal middle school Latin teacher, Abby Holt, who presented at this ACTFL, the national conference, which is very selective to be accepted to present there. And I'm not sure exactly what she's doing. I'm fairly certain she's casting a spell in Latin and has done something
That language
to
or
the
something.
person.
The one thing that fascinated me was that you talked about the conversion of the classrooms to an immersion model, so that once you walk in the door, you need to speak that language. And I'm thinking of those first year kids in September who are walking in knowing nothing of the language. how long does it take before you're able to at least get the basic classroom commands and phraseology so that you can run a class for a day without reverting to English? And how difficult is that?
I hope I won't shock you. It's day one, level one. So the first day is entirely in the language. We do this by a lot of body language. So you can imagine all the classroom commands: raise your hand, sit down, take out a piece of paper that you can show the students while you're telling them. There's a strategy called TPR, Total Physical Response, where you give a prompt, a command, and the student doesn't need to speak. They just need to show physically that they understand what you're telling them to do. That's extremely effective, particularly at the beginning where you're doing this type of thing. But it's actually amazing. So yes, students, it can be a little scary that first day when you walk in and the teacher's speaking only Spanish. And they truly, I think, are amazed themselves at how quickly they can understand and follow along what's going on in the classroom. It takes strategies, the pictures, the visuals, the body language, cognates, certainly in French and Spanish, are hugely helpful. You know, the word for question in French is question. So you write that on the board and, you don't need to translate it. You've shown them pretty quickly what it means. So there's a lot of strategies, and it takes training. So that's why I said when I started here, I would say we were around 50-50. So some teachers were using the target language, some teachers, needed some support. And so that's something that we've really worked on, ensuring the strategies there first, and then it's really amazing how effective it is. And then establishing, week 2, week 3, a no English rule in the classroom. It takes strategies and it takes training and practice, but it's incredibly effective. And I do think the teachers at this point are able to do that in an effective way where students feel supported.
Excellent.
It's exciting. And I would love for any of you, if you'd like to come in, the middle school Mandarin classroom is rather outstanding to come and see what's going on in there. And you're like, oh my God, I'm in Beijing and the kids are all speaking Mandarin. So it really works.
May I say?
Yeah, Dr. Ray.
Dr. Rutz and I met with, what was the name of that gentleman who designed the language programs in Utah?
We had a visitor from Greg Duncan,
Yeah,
who
yes.
came last year. Mhm.
And one of the things that I learned in that meeting with him is that this is best practice. That the old way of translating, a teacher translating what they're being said is, first of all, it's created a generation of people who don't speak. So I want to applaud the whole department, and Catherine in particular, for her leadership in this, because it really has been quite transformative in terms of the performance of our students. And ultimately, I agree that what is the goal is to be able to communicate, and if they can go and talk in a language, how wonderful is that?
Absolutely.
Dr. Allison, MP.
I had a couple questions. First, this is really wonderful. So I'm wondering, what you said that you're trying to phase out textbooks, and I'm wondering what will kids have as reference material when they're trying to do stuff at home?
So we've truthfully been developing a lot of the resources. So the kids are getting, so we're using the shift has been the textbook dictates the curriculum and we go through the chapters, to we've come up with our units and maybe we're pulling a piece here, a piece there from the textbook. There are so many online resources available today. I know a lot of teachers, I'm thinking of one who's put together a YouTube page where she's found presentations that help explain the different concepts for students. Other teachers are making their own, it's the flipped classroom concept where they're creating their own references or supports for students at home. But it's really a shift. The reference materials tend to be, I imagine what you're thinking of is like a grammar explanation. And that's something where the grammar is important as long as it helps with a communication goal. And we really want to step away from having students be bogged down in heavy grammar explanations, which really don't help them communicate or learn in the language. So the grammar explanations are really subsidiary to using the language and speaking with it. So it's sort of a shift. So I guess I would say that, so that teachers are pulling together resources from different areas, some textbooks, some online, some video, and so on, to help students. And I will just point out that for Latin is the one exception, because it's really a reading-based curriculum. We do need to have a book. So that's not the area that we're leaving the textbooks.
And then the other question I had was about the online courses, and I'm just wondering if you could explain how they work logistically for the students.
Sure. So we're offering them as an elective. There is a small fee. However, so students will sign up through BYU. It's around $200 for a year. It does offer a scholarship. So I've had, and they've actually been fairly generous. I had 2 students this year alone who got almost full. You know, if it's $200, they paid $20 for the course. And the district, I think in at least 1 or 2 cases, has paid ourselves for a student. So we've tried to be conscious of students who may need some financial support. So students register online through BU, and I'm actually the person that facilitates them. So I'm their official proctor for the course, so I can see their grades, and I go through in Power School and monitor their grades in BYU and put the grades into Power School. I'm in email contact with the students. They come by my office for questions or help. Just had 2 students come by today with a question because the end of the term's coming up. So I'm sort of overseeing and facilitating. And then they do have a final exam that's mailed to me, so I'm the proctor for that exam. But it's pretty nice. They also have online speaking component. I mean, speaking is the one piece that you feel like you would miss in an online course, and it really is. But they try to compensate. They have what they call a conversation cafe, so students have to log in and have a conversation. Or for American Sign Language, they're having a Skype conversation to show their signing skills with them. But that's the logistical explanation.
Are they doing it in the library? Are they?
Oh, sure, sorry. So students are working independently on the course. They are allowed to use the language lab. A number of them prefer to use the media center, so it's not a course that attendance is taken for. They work on their own, but I'm kind of monitoring them on a weekly basis. Some students do it at home, and that's fine as long as they're working about an hour a day on the course. And, I would say, I'm thinking of one student who had some other issues and wasn't able to complete the course, but I think all of our students have been very successful in these courses.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Hayner.
A couple of things. First off, in that Latin assessment with the gladiatorial, was that a pass-fail?
No.
I'm kidding, about if they survived the bump, that's all. The second part, I just want to share with you, in the military language course, there's total immersion, and it begins with their first day in the dining room. And if they do not ask for they get exactly what they ask for, and they learn quickly.
Sure.
So thank you for everything you've done. I
No
think it's
problem.
fantastic.
Mr. Thielman.
So the 98% all taught in the language, how do you measure that?
So this national guideline's 90%. So how do you measure it? Yeah,
If it's a 48-minute class, it's 47 minutes, right?
So that's a good question. So people get confused. I don't mean to get too into the pedagogy here, but people get confused. What does 90% mean? So 90% does not mean that I'm kind of timing myself, and
Yeah.
maybe if I translate a little bit here and there in English, I'm still like 90% of the time in French. That's okay. It means being conscious about when you're choosing to use, and purposeful about when you're choosing to use English. Because there's that 10% that you say, okay, you could use English. So the times that it's appropriate to use English in a foreign language classroom are referring to the goal, reflecting on the goal, having students set goals for themselves. I mean, that type of thing. Having, even sometimes assessment prompts, because the purpose of the assessment prompt is to kind of motivate and get the student engaged. That might be a time it's appropriate to use English. So really, if you walk into the classroom, maybe and a lot of the teachers are at 100%. I will just say that they just don't want to speak English anymore. But what might be, and which is good. They want just the kids, I'm in Spanish, that's it. But what might be appropriate is that the beginning, first 5 minutes, I review the goal with you, I review the agenda, I ask if there's any questions, and they will say, okay, now the rest of the class up until the last 5 minutes is 100% in French or Spanish, and at the last 5 minutes we reflect, okay, did we meet our goals? How do you think we did? So those are when English is being purposefully used and thoughtfully. So not for, as Dr. Bodie mentioned, these sort of translations that we want to avoid.
So now I'm going to talk to my son all in Spanish now that I know this. So that's it. You know, I took, you know,
I know you're fluent in Spanish.
Yeah, and I wasn't
I
going to.
know.
But I took Spanish years ago in college, and then when I went to Peru, I'm interested in the gender improvement in Peru. I was there about 5 years ago. I don't know how much it's improved, but okay, I'll take the study for what it says. But I'll never forget in one of my classes, in one of the classes, which is all in Spanish, this whole thing I had to do for 8 weeks, the inflections and the way they would talk. What was the word you used? The
Cognates?
No,
Oh,
no,
the,
no. The way the teaching method.
The body language?
Yeah, body language.
Yeah.
So in one class, you know, I was yawning, and so I'll never forget how. That's why I learned the word bostezando, because she made fun of me in the whole class.
Right.
No, estás bostezando.
Never forget it again.
Never forgot it. Yeah. No, but it's actually a good way to learn the word.
Mm-hmm.
And other
That's the
words.
total physical response.
Total physical
response.
It was a total physical response. She got right in my face. So, and then I figured out what bostezado meant.
Right. You figured it out. Problem-solving skills, right there.
I was limited. I made progress.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Great. This is very
Mr.
exciting.
Carton.
So I wanted to ask about the sixth grade program. So I guess
Sure.
long before my time on the committee, there was a different program. Then we went through the budget crisis, and that was changed to just like a survey program where they went through
Right.
different languages over the year. And then last year, it was changed to they get to pick a language, and they only do that language for every other day, I guess. But then in seventh grade, they can pick it. Basically, they start all over again. So. How does that work? Why do we do it that way?
Sure.
Is it only because of budget or what's the reason?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. It wasn't last year. I think it was at least 2 or possibly 3. We have gone through a few different models with the sixth grade. When I came in, it was a different model. We tried what's called the exploratory model, which is problematic for a number of reasons. And then we said, you know what, we're just going to start the language. So the current model we have is students choose a language in sixth grade. And then they study, it's every other day is the way that we have the current program. And then at the end of the year, we do give the students a choice of switching. So they're not officially, I wouldn't say that they're starting over in seventh grade. So we've got around 75% of the students that stick with their language, but there's a couple that want to switch. And the reason we did that this way is because we do have transfer students who might come in. We have a number of students that don't take a language in sixth grade because they're in academic support classes. So we wanted to have a flexible program in the seventh grade to welcome new students in, so to not be exclusive. So let's say 75% of the kids in the Spanish class took it in sixth grade, and then you got a few students that are new into the course. So yes, there's a review at the beginning of the year in the seventh grade, but because the bulk of the students have had the language before, you can go fairly quickly through it, and it actually brings up the level of those students who may not have had the language last year. So we're trying to strike a balance where those few new students aren't going to be totally behind, but it's also not a totally slow. So there is, again, it's a review, but it's a fairly quick review, then brings the students up. And we've tried to plan. It's not entirely possible because you're beginning the language, you're going to be repeating certain topics, but we've tried to think of different things that might happen in sixth that would happen then in the seventh. But that's the structure of the program currently. So, you know, it's just a challenge when we're trying to find, we want to be inclusive and allow students in. So if it were 100% of the kids were taking it all year and we knew that was it, you know, we could be stricter about that, but that's the balance we've tried to strike. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask the obvious question, which is about Gibbs. So we'll have a new school in a couple of years, and so potentially the opportunity for a new model.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about what you might recommend?
Well, so yes, Dr. Bodie and Dr. Chess and I have been talking a lot about what we could potentially do at the Gibbs. So we haven't made any final decision. We've been thinking about some different scenarios. I think what's important for me, I think Arlington really should be proud of the diverse language offerings that we have. This is actually, if you look at other districts, you might find 2 languages, and the fact that we've got 4 in the middle and 5 in the high school is really, I think, a point of pride for this town. At the same time, we're able to do that because we've got some larger schools. So we've got a mid-sized high school. We're able to do this. We have enough students that are interested that we can offer a range of languages. The middle school's been fairly large, so we've been able to pull off 4 languages. If we're moving to a smaller model with the Gibbs, which is what's going to be happening, it becomes really challenging to keep that high level of diversity with all 4 languages. So I think I hope we're going to find a balance where we can keep some of the linguistic diversity in our program while also recognizing the constraints around, the smaller school, the staffing, the scheduling constraints, and so on. So I think that's, I hope the direction we're moving in with our ultimate program. So no decision has been made, but that's sort of some of our preliminary thinking.
Okay, great. Thanks. Actually, one more question.
Sure.
I've been asking of everyone. So you said a little bit about how you feel that foreign language has evolved over the last, 10, 15 years. Where do you see it going in the future? So where do you see sort of us or Arlington evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
There's really, I've mentioned the word proficiency a lot tonight. There's a proficiency movement afoot. It's something we've been talking about when I meet with other teachers from other districts or other department heads. You ask the question, what is a 1, what is a 2? It's sort of arbitrary. There's a lot of discussion in other districts about, that I'm participating in as well, and really questioning, can we refocus our courses to really have a proficiency-based model where we're saying you're hitting a novice high and now you can move into the intermediate low group. That's something that needs a lot of thought. It's a complicated change. It's just a very different program structure than the one that not just we're accustomed to in Arlington, but really every school I'm familiar with has.
So students could move at their own level, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which is exciting, but presents, it's just a very different structure model. That's really where I see foreign language going is, so in an ideal world, yeah, you could, when you've hit novice high, you can test out and move into the intermediate low. And some students, I said that intermediate can take a long time. Some students are much quicker. Maybe they already speak Portuguese at home and they can whip right through the Spanish up to the advanced level. So do they really need to go through level 2, level 3, level 4? Could they move more quickly? But that's just not the structure we have right now. So I'd say that's something that I've been thinking about and have had conversations about, but I don't think we're quite there to make that kind of a radical shift in the structure of our program, but
Great, okay. Thanks.
perhaps.
Great, thanks for
Thank you.
coming here and telling us about the program, and we've learned a lot.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to speak about our program, and I appreciate as well the support of the school committee and the administration in letting us run such a great program. So thank you very much.